All right. Well, I think we are at 12:30 here, so we will get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another History Chats here at the Marathon County Historical Society. This week, we're going to be doing something a little different. We're starting, in the past, we've kind of done thematically, and we're going to talk about all of um, the schools, kind of cover the whole gambit, and healthcare and hospitals. In the next few weeks, we're actually going to be talking specifically about different people, and we thought this would be kind of a nice sort of framing mechanism to say who you should know if you're someone who thinks that you know about history here, or maybe you don't, and you're interested in who should you be aware of in the history of Marathon County, who's had an impact or whose story isn't as well known as it should. These are the people that we're going to try to focus on. So we picked 5, at least to round out the year here. We will probably return to this concept. So if you have any suggestions for people that we, as always, we're always open for feedback for that regard. But today we are going to be joined, Gary is going to be telling us about the first of these 5, Father Daniels of Marathon City. So before I have him unmute here and start telling us about that story, again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the chat. If you're not familiar, in the live stream there will be sort of a chat section, usually to below, I think, depending on when you're looking at it. So if you're signed into Facebook or YouTube, you can leave a comment there while we're talking. So if you do that, we will have some question answer time at the end to do that. So there you go. With that, I'm going to invite Gary to come back in here. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben. So let me begin here with a little bit of a story on Father Daniels. Father Weinand Daniels. You wonder why am I picking Father Daniels for a part of this series? Well, it's my view that he had such a significant impact on Marathon City and Marathon County that I think really would want to influence him a lot. His personality was bold and adventurous. He had always been intrigued me in a way, a personality of deep religious conviction, a belief in the church and members of his own congregation, a personality of such magnitude that his influence reached beyond his congregation, beyond Marathon City, and all aspects of the larger church. So with that, back up a little too fast. So as part of the series, I feel that it is one of the people that you should know. If you know Marathon City, there is significant history, and also, like I said before, significant history as part of Marathon County. Father Daniels was born in Geisenkirchen, Germany. He went on to attend school in Holland, University of Innsbruck, 1 year at the priest seminary in Mainz, Germany, ordained in Mainz in 1890, came to America that same year. After serving brief churches in Chippewa Falls and Marshfield, he moved to St. Michael's in Hewitt from 1891 to 1904. And that's really where we'll begin the story of Father Daniels. We'll begin the story of Father Daniels in Hewitt, coming there in 1891. Hewitt, a small little community to the east of Marshfield. Again, he had served time, a parish in Marshfield briefly, but then he has his own congregation now at St. Michael's in Hewitt, a little crossroads community. So immediately upon his arrival, I mean, he is, again, I come back to the point of his personality such a strong influencer in whatever community he came to. So within a very few years, he had the congregation build this church and this school in Marathon, in Hewitt. By 1904, he had built this congregation. And prior to his coming in Hewitt, there was just a matter of 70 families. They had served, they had their services in a town hall, in the second floor of a town hall. And immediately upon coming, Father Daniels had built this, had the congregation built this church and this school. You notice in the tower, it says 1904. Well, within that year, Father Daniels was already transferring to Marathon City. And this is a note in the Marshfield newspaper. Although his appointments were made more than a month ago, the fact was not publicly announced until last Sunday at his parish at St. Michael's. There were many tear-stained faces as the people filed from the church. So again, a small, maybe an indicator of the great influence that he did have on St. Michael's in Hewitt. So he then thus moved to Marathon City. Marathon City, about 10 miles to the west of Wausau, a little bit off of Highway 29 on the rail junction, again coming out of Wausau. So now he's in Marathon City. This is the church that he's had when he arrived. This is the church he came into. But the unique story with this church, St. Mary's Catholic Church, goes back to the 1857, 1858, when a small band of Pittsburgh German Catholics left Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, deciding that they wanted to live in out of the industrial city of Pittsburgh. They wanted to breathe free. So they sent their scouts up to central Wisconsin, purchased land, which we now would know as Marathon City, also the town of Castle and the town of Marathon. So these German Catholic Pittsburgh people came here, and what they did is they gave everybody a couple lots in the city, some acreage for farming. And on the map that they drew, they wanted their church and their school. They felt very, very determined that they were going to have a church, and it was the basis of these Pittsburgh Germans coming 50 years earlier to Marathon City. That would be the basis of Father Daniels' congregation in 1904 when he came to Marathon City. So again, not coming to Marathon City in 1904, within a year after his arrival, he had already acquired 2 blocks on Market Street on the hill for a new church, a new school, a new convent for the sisters. He wanted already, his great ambition for St. Mary's was already evident, because he wanted them on the hill overseeing the city of Marathon City. So this is his first project was a new school. So this school he had built on Market Street, quite an impressive building. Again, within 1 year of his being there, this school was built. The convent already was there, but again, he had so maneuvered, so inspired his congregation at St. Mary's that they had this school built on the hill. You can see that this is an early picture of Marathon City. lot of trees are still yet to come. But the school on the hill was a prominent place in Marathon City, and Father Daniels wanted to make sure that St. Mary's was this outstanding place on the top of the hill in Marathon City. But he wasn't done. He still had other projects yet to do. So within a few years, he had the congregation ready to build a new church. This is a little story in the newspaper. St. Mary's congregation will have one of the finest church edifices in the county. Again, awarded to Dubuque contractor. And this is the result of his endeavors to build a new church for St. Mary's. Father Anton Domen, a German immigrant architect from Milwaukee, was hired to design the church. And with this, this church was built in 1911. So within a couple years, then Father Daniels had the church, a parsonage, the school, and a convent for the sisters. So this is, again, if this church looks familiar to you, it was designed by Anton Domen, like I said, out of Milwaukee. It was Anton Domen also, just a few years prior, designed St. Stephen's Lutheran Church here in Wausau. And within a couple years later, he would design what was then called St. James Catholic Church in Wausau, now Church of the Resurrection. So again, some of the same types of architectural treatments was going on, pretty much identical churches. The three doors entering into the main sanctuary. This, just so that as a sidelight to this, St. Stephen's Lutheran Church is eligible, according to a recent survey, is eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. Anton Domen has several churches in Wisconsin and in the Dakotas on the National Register. St. Mary's is not as yet, but because of the significance of this architecture, it certainly would be eligible, I think, for the National Register of Historic Places. These three churches, St. Stephen's, Church of the Resurrection, and now St. Mary's, are classic structures, classic churches, classic buildings within Marathon County. And if you get a chance, get to Marathon City so that you can witness really one of the prize architectural structures in this county. This is an older picture of what it looks like inside. It was completely remodeled, and I shouldn't say remodeled, redone just lately. And this is how it looks today. Again, a chance for you to witness one of the a fine example of this type of architecture in Marathon County. But Father Daniels wasn't done. He had felt that he was aware that the Capuchin Fathers of Order of Franciscans were looking for a place to house their new school of theology. Their school of theology was in Milwaukee, and they felt in 1916, 17, they wanted their young students out of Milwaukee, out of the temptation of the urban city, into something a little bit freer, a little bit more, let's say, fresh air into the North Woods. So Father Daniels, again, his persuasive personality, convinced the Franciscans, the Capuchin Franciscans, to build their new school of theology in Marathon City. So they acquired some acreage to the east of Marathon City on 4th Street that would now house their School of Theology. The Capuchin Fathers now in early 1919 were expecting to occupy the building. It didn't get opened until the fall, but again, be built of reddish brown brick with stones and brick trimming in a Romanesque style. So then in 1919, this was built, and one sidelight story, I think, for Father Daniels was that he really was a cajoler. I'm sure he's talking to one of his contractors. He persuaded, as part of the deal that the Capuchins would come to Marathon City, was that his congregation would provide stones and some of the work that would go into the foundation of the School of Theology, what would come to be called St. Anthony's. So again, Father Daniels, most likely talking to a parishioner or maybe a contractor, trying to get a favor, perhaps get a favor done for St. Anthony's. So in 1919, this St. Anthony's, this Capuchin monastery was opened in Marathon City, a little bit to the east of Marathon City, in some acreage there. And again, the tie between St. Mary's and St. Anthony's became legendary. This could very well have been the cornerstone laying. Father Daniels brought the whole congregation out to St. Anthony's for the cornerstone, or perhaps the dedication. Here they're coming down 4th Street to St. Anthony's, a testament really to the strong tie that St. Mary's had to St. Anthony's throughout these years. In a few years, St. Anthony's was proven to be too small, so they added the 4th side, or the north side of the building, to the building in 1922. The picture of the construction on the north side of St. Anthony's. Again, just some pictures. There was an addition at this point. So this is St. Anthony's, the School of Theology for the Capuchins, beginning in 1919, and it was this school until the 1970s, when tides in the church led fewer and fewer students to come here, so they closed the School of Theology, moved it back to Milwaukee, but it became a retreat center. There was an addition added in the 1970s, also prior to the retreat center area, but then it became a retreat center until just lately, when the Capuchins completely pulled out of it and it became a sole nonprofit entity. So this is St. Anthony's today as you come into the property of St. Anthony's. Again, quite reminiscent really of the Romanesque style that was at St. Mary's. This was designed by Hans Liebert, a Wausau architect, who also designed at that time St. Mary's School on Grand Avenue. Again, a picture of the monastery there at Marathon City. So again, the Capuchins were always a big part of Father Daniels. Father Daniels there on the second from the right, and the Capuchins were always a part of his life when he was at St. Mary's Church. In 1930, he became a Monsignor, and this is a picture of his. It's an elevation really of his status within within the Catholic Church. And then this is Father Daniels, a little bit to the left there, the shorter one on the left, on the front row, with the bishop coming to town. He always had a strong tie to the bishops and to fellow priests within the Diocese of La Crosse. And then this was the little note in the paper with regard to his 25th anniversary. It says Marathon Catholic priests will celebrate silver anniversary. And it goes on to say that in commemoration, the anniversary will be observed at Marathon. Solemn High Mass will be celebrated by Reverend Father Daniels at 10 o'clock in the forenoon at St. Mary's Church. He will be assisted by 6 priests at the altar in the presence of the Right Reverend James Schwabach, Bishop of the La Crosse Diocese. 51 or more priests of the La Crosse Diocese and others from Chicago and Milwaukee will be present. 2 sermons will be delivered following the Mass. One will be delivered in German and the other in English by visiting clergymen. Again, let me just back up. Again, just the acknowledgement of his presence, of his notoriety within not only the diocese, but within the state of Wisconsin. But then in concluding in 1936, Father Daniels passed away in Wausau at a local hospital. Bishop, of course, celebrated at the Pontifical High Mass, is honored by Rome. So again, a person who had his significant presence in Marathon City and in Marathon County. Marathon City would certainly not be the same if Father Daniels had not been there. Led the German Catholic congregation of St. Mary's to build the schools, to build the large church on Market Street, and eventually to lead the Capuchin Franciscans into Marathon City to build their School of Theology at St. Anthony's. Quite an influential, I think, a very influential person in the city, and one of the people that you should know as one of the great citizens, the great people that history should acknowledge in the history of Marathon County. So with that, I turn it back to Ben, and we'll have any comments or questions that we have at this time.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm not seeing any. We'll give you some time if you have any questions that you want to ask. Again, feel free to do that. I guess in the meantime, so just going back to the history chat, what's coming up next? Like Gary said, the purpose of this is to really get into some of the other areas of the community and talk about some leaders, some figures that we want to talk about. So just to give you a taste of what's coming up, next week we're going to be talking about George Cook of Unity. Certainly not just an important figure in the community of Unity out in our western half of the county, but also was actually one of the longest serving members of the County Board of Supervisors in Marathon County during his time. So certainly an interesting fellow in that regard. And then we'll talk about Louis Marchetti, judge and historian, as well as Helen Ohm, the first city councilwoman and county board member from Wausau here. And then Ali Bach-Wig, who actually was one of the influential figures in getting some of the paper companies established here, specifically in Mosinee. So that's all coming up. We'd love for you to join us. Again, every Thursday at 12:30, or you can always check the recordings after the fact. We do keep those up on our YouTube and here on Facebook as well. Okay, so just take another look here. Do you have any other questions? Otherwise, so Scott Peterson asked, well, first he says hello to Gary.
Well,
Then he follows up with, can you go up and just walk around the grounds? I guess referring to the facilities that he helped to build up there.
at St. Anthony's, the ground, because of the COVID crisis we are now in, and there are some, no, but more normal circumstances, there are trails, there's some other things that you can observe on the grounds of St. Anthony's, yes. But currently they're closed, and hopefully, you know, we'll be opening up the grounds as soon as it is healthy and safe to do that.
Yeah, as with everything else in 2020 and for the foreseeable future. Yeah, cool. Well, I think that's probably good. We're getting the extent of really the June mentioned sort of at the beginning when you were showing the architecture, commented that there was very beautiful architecture inside those churches, which, yeah, hard to argue with that. So yeah, but I think we'll call that here since we're looks like we're out of questions. Again, if you have any other questions, feel free to add them after the fact or get in touch with us. Otherwise, we will see you next week for some discussion about another person you should know.
Thank you very much.